What if destiny wasn't decided by blood, but by the choices we make? In a world where only royals could bond with guardians, one human will break everything. But destiny doesn't always follow the rules written by kings and queens. Sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can change the fate of entire worlds. On a distant alien planet, during a raging storm, one human made a choice. To save a fragile life. To forge a bond that defied centuries of sacred tradition. This is the story of Ethan Hope, Princess Farera, and a creature named Cobalt. And how a single forbidden bond would ignite a revolution, and awaken ancient enemies beyond the stars. The storm howled across the violet skies of Proximus Antoria B, its fury rattling the reinforced windows of the remote human outpost. Lieutenant Commander Ethan Hope stood at the viewport, silent, watching lightning carve jagged scars across the darkened heavens. 3 months had passed since he and his team had arrived on this strange world, cataloging its alien flora and fauna for Earth's interstellar initiative. 3 long, uneventful months. Until tonight. A pressure built in his chest, a whisper of instinct honed by years beyond the safety of Earth's atmosphere. Something was happening. Something the sensors barely understood, but his bones felt with absolute certainty. The COMM crackled. Sir, seismic readings in Sector 7 are spiking like crazy. Specialist Chiver's voice came through, strained and crackling with static. Massive ground collapse, unnatural patterns. Ethan didn't hesitate. Prep the rover, he ordered sharply, already sealing his environmental suit. He knew the protocols. He also knew that sometimes, waiting meant missing the one moment that could change everything. The rover's heavy frame rumbled across the alien terrain, jostled by the storm's chaotic winds. Acidic rain hissed as it struck the reinforced windows, forming glowing rivulets against the glass. Ahead, the earth had split apart. A massive sinkhole, at least 50 meters across, yawned open, its edges still crumbling inward. But what seized Ethan's attention wasn't the destruction, it was the faint shimmer emanating from deep within the chasm. Some kind of structure, Chivers breathed, staring wide-eyed through the windshield. Ethan brought the rover to a halt. We're going in. Gear up. Tethered to the rover, their suits braced against the howling wind, they rappelled down into the darkness. The deeper they went, the more Ethan felt it, an energy thrumming against his skin, not threatening, but ancient and vast. The walls of the chasm gave way to something unnatural. Sleek black stone, polished to a mirror-like sheen, veins of glowing silver threading through it like the veins of a living thing. Alien architecture. A collapsed corridor led them into what had once been a grand chamber. Obsidian walls rose high above, and faint symbols worn with time but still humming with unseen power lined the surfaces. And then they saw it. A tiny creature, no bigger than Ethan's palm, huddled in a corner. Blue fur matted with what looked like luminescent blood. Ice blue eyes, wide with fear and intelligence. Chivers instinctively raised his scanner. Ethan stopped him with a sharp motion. Because in that moment, something shifted. A connection. Fragile. Real. The creature whimpered, a sound so small yet so full of life that Ethan's heart clenched. He stepped forward. Another tremor shook the ground, dislodging shards of black stone from the ceiling. No time. Acting without thought, Ethan scooped the tiny being into his arm, cradling it against his chest. It trembled against him, its heartbeat rapid but steady. Together, they sprinted back toward the rover as the ancient structure collapsed in on itself, a plume of violet dust rising into the stormy sky. Back at the outpost, the creature whom Ethan soon named Cobalt for the vivid hue of its fur became an enigma. The science team clamored to study it, to prod and dissect and label. But Ethan stood firm. Cobalt wasn't an object. He was someone. Under Ethan's care, Cobalt's wound slowly healed. He began to move with more confidence, exploring Ethan's quarters with wide-eyed curiosity. He showed no aggression, only a strange mixture of wariness and trust. At night, Cobalt would curl up beside Ethan's pillow, his tiny body vibrating with soft, purring breaths. And every night, Ethan's dreams grew stranger. He dreamed of cities of living crystal, of green-skinned beings adorned with silver hair, of guardians, massive blue-furred creatures standing silent watch over temples older than memory. He dreamed of a voice whispering, over and over, "Chosen." Weeks passed. Cobalt grew. At first, it was subtle, longer limbs, sharper awareness, a gleam of fierce intelligence in his icy gaze. But then, the growth accelerated. Within a month, Cobalt stood knee-high, his muscles rippling beneath his vibrant fur. Earth Command grew nervous. The energy readings from Cobalt's room pulsed with patterns more complex than any human technology. Fields of resonance Ethan could feel but not explain. Orders came swiftly. Transfer the specimen to the Europa Research Facility. Immediate compliance required. Ethan's chest tightened. He stared at the cold message blinking on his console, feeling the silent creature press against his leg in silent trust. He couldn't give Cobalt up. Not to sterile laboratories. Not to fear. Not when something deep inside told him they were meant to find each other. And then, the sky tore open. Radar picked up an object entering orbit fast, precise, unlike any natural phenomenon. Sirens wailed. Personnel rushed to stations. The alien ship descended through the clouds, a thing of impossible beauty. Its surface shimmered like flowing mercury, changing colors with a shifting storm light. It hovered above the outpost, silent, watching. And then, the COMM crackled. Incoming transmission. On screen, she appeared. Princess Farrera of the Vidia Collective. Her green skin gleamed under soft ceremonial light. Silver hair framed a face of stunning symmetry and sharp intelligence. Golden armor clung to her lithe form, etched with ancient symbols Ethan couldn't decipher. She spoke perfect English, yet tinged with a melody that was not human. "You have something sacred," she said, her voice neither warm nor hostile. "A guardian cub, stolen from its awakening right. It must be returned." Silence stretched across the control room. Ethan stepped forward. "I found him injured. I saved him." Farrera's emerald eyes narrowed. "Guardians," she explained, "were sacred beings, bonded only to the royal bloodline of Vidia. Their connection was not a choice. It was destiny. Yet somehow, this tiny creature had chosen him. A human." Farrera's composure faltered for just a heartbeat before she regained it. "This complicates everything." Her ship demanded the return of the Guardian. Earth Command wanted the creature surrendered. The future of two worlds pivoted on a single fragile bond. And Ethan, standing in the storm's heart, made his decision. "I'll go with him," he said. "I'll go to Vidia." The ship that carried Ethan and Cobalt through the stars moved like a living creature. Its walls pulsed faintly with alien energy, the corridors smooth and organic, as if grown rather than built. Inside, the atmosphere was heavy with tension. Ethan sat near a wide viewport, staring at the endless river of stars beyond. Cobalt lay curled at his feet, his vibrant blue fur rising and falling with each slow breath. Across from him, Princess Farrera sat silent, studying him with unreadable emerald eyes. He felt the weight of her gaze, the curiosity and suspicion. To her people, he was an anomaly. A threat. And perhaps, a mistake. During the journey, Ferreira explained pieces of Vidian culture. The Guardians were sacred, bred for millennia to bond with a royal bloodline alone. The bond was not merely political, it was spiritual, emotional, a merging of energy that anchored the Guardian's incredible power. Without it, a Guardian's strength could become chaotic, destructive. But never in their recorded history had a Guardian chosen an outsider. Your bond should not exist, Ferreira said one evening, her voice quiet as starlight. And yet, it does. Ethan said nothing. What could he say? He hadn't chosen this either. It had chosen him. Or perhaps, they had chosen each other. As they approached Vidia, the viewport filled with breathtaking beauty. An emerald world bathed in twin suns. Towering crystal cities rose from endless jungles. Rivers of molten gold wove through forests alive with iridescent plants. Ethan felt his breath catch. Not even Earth's most vivid dreams could have imagined such splendor. But beauty, he would soon learn, did not mean safety. The transport ascended toward a sprawling city nestled between massive roots of ancient, living trees. Dozens of Vidian ships, sleek, graceful things, circled above. At the landing platform, a crowd had gathered. As Ethan stepped out, a hush fell. Hundreds of green-skinned Vidian citizens, dressed in flowing garments that shimmered like liquid stars, stared at him. Some with awe. Some with fear. Most with thinly veiled disgust. Cobalt pressed against Ethan's leg, sensing the hostility in the air. A delegation approached, warriors in ceremonial armor, faces stern. At their head stood an imposing figure, tall, silver-haired, draped in regal robes embroidered with golden sigils. High Sovereign Talon, ruler of Vidia, Ferreira's father. His gaze was sharp enough to pierce bone. He said no words of welcome. Only a single, clipped command. Bring them to the Temple of Guardians. The temple was older than memory. Massive columns of living crystal soared upward, forming arches that hummed with unseen power. Guardians, full-grown ones, towering at 3 meters tall, stood silent watch along the corridors. Their blue fur shimmered. Their ice-blue eyes followed Ethan's every move. And yet, as Ethan passed, they inclined their heads, subtle, but unmistakable. Ferreira's steps faltered beside him. This has never happened before, she whispered. Ethan said nothing. He felt Cobalt's presence beside him, a steady pulse of trust, like a second heartbeat in his chest. In the heart of the temple, Mentor Krell awaited. Ancient beyond reckoning, his green skin had faded to a pale silver gray. His eyes, however, burned with fierce intelligence. I am Krell, he said simply. For 60 cycles, I have studied the mysteries of the Guardian bonds. Never have I seen what stands before me now. He produced a slender device that emitted pulses of soft light. He scanned Ethan, Cobalt, then paused, eyes widening. Extraordinary. What is it? Ferreira asked sharply. Krell turned to the gathered council members, his voice rising. This human's energy signature resonates at a frequency nearly identical to the royal bloodline but distinct. Natural. Pure. Proof that the bond chooses not based on blood but on spirit. Gasps filled the chamber. Whispers rippled through the air like a gathering storm. Ferreira stiffened. The pillars of her upbringing, her very identity, cracked under the weight of this truth. You are saying, she said slowly, carefully, that the royal bloodline is irrelevant. Not irrelevant, Krell corrected. But not exclusive. The Guardians chose. Not the blood. Not the crown. The being. Silence thickened. Then, from the shadows, another voice, sharp, cold. Lord Vex stepped forward, clad in armor gleaming with too much gold and pride. "This is heresy," he declared. "The human must be contained." The creature returned to its rightful keepers. Ethan's fists clenched. Cobalt growled low in his throat. Ferrera stepped between them, her stance rigid with tension. "You would imprison a being chosen by the Guardians themselves." Vex sneered. "I would protect Vidia from an abomination." The High Sovereign said nothing, his face unreadable. But Ethan saw the doubt flickering behind those ancient eyes. That night, confined to modest quarters within a temple, Ethan stared out at the twin moons. Cobalt lay at his side, restless, sensing his turmoil. He thought of Earth, of home, of oceans he might never see again, of the simple comfort of belonging somewhere. And he thought of Ferrera, of the way her voice softened when she spoke of forgotten freedoms, of the way her armor gleamed under the sanctuary lights, of the storm in her emerald eyes. Somehow, against all odds, his path had led him here to a place he didn't belong. And yet, perhaps he did. Perhaps he belonged exactly where the Guardians had led him. In the shadows of the temple, as the night deepened, Lord Vex sharpened his plans. Old traditions would be defended, even if it meant blood would spill across the sacred stones. And far beyond the twin moons, ancient eyes watched, waiting, hungering. The first tremors of the true war had begun. At dawn, the Temple of Guardians trembled. A blast shook the sacred corridors, sending shards of crystal raining from the ceilings. Ethan jerked awake, Cobalt already on his feet, muscles taut. The doors burst open. Vidian guards clad in heavy armor flooded in, faces hard, weapons drawn. Leading them, clad in darker, more brutal armor, was Lord Vex. "The human and his abomination are to be detained," he barked. "By order of the High Council." Ferrera appeared moments later, her ceremonial armor hastily thrown on, eyes blazing. "You dare," she hissed at Vex. "My father gave no such decree." Vex sneered. "The Council acts for the good of Vidia. Bloodlines must be preserved. Tradition must endure." Ethan moved instinctively, shielding Cobalt. He knew this was no arrest. This was an execution masked in political words. They ran through twisting corridors, past startled acolytes and roaring guardians who sensed the wrongness in the air. Ferrera led them through hidden passages she had learned as a child. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew louder. "To the southern gate," Krell urged, his old voice sharp and commanding. "The wilderness beyond will mask us." They burst from the temple into open daylight, the twin suns rising over emerald forests that stretched to the horizon. Before them, the emerald wilds. Untamed. Uncharted. Older than Vidia itself. No walls. No sanctuaries. Only survival. They plunged into the wilderness. The towering trees shimmered with bioluminescent vines. Strange creatures flitted through the canopy, birds with crystal feathers, insects that left trails of sparkling light. The air smelled of life, of danger. Ferrera led with the confidence of a born scout, her silver hair flashing like a beacon among the dense undergrowth. Ethan followed close, Cobalt moving with silent grace beside him, always alert. Behind them, shadows moved. Vex soldiers were relentless. The first attack came at the river crossing. As they waded through waist-deep waters glowing faintly from bioluminescent moss, arrows sliced through the air. Cobalt leapt forward, intercepting a bolt meant for Ethan. The arrow splintered harmlessly against his thickening hide. Ferrera whirled, firing her plasma bow, sending a guard tumbling into the river. Krell used knowledge, not violence activating ancient stones hidden along the bank that triggered a blinding flare of light. They escaped but barely. By nightfall, they were exhausted, huddled beneath the broad leaves of a massive tree whose roots formed a natural shelter. Ethan tended Farrara's wounds in silence, the light from the twin moons casting their faces in silver and shadow. "You saved me," Farrara said quietly, as he wrapped her arm with careful hands. "You would have done the same," Ethan murmured. A long pause stretched between them. Around them, the wilds whispered the sound of 1,000 unseen creatures living ancient lives. Finally, Farrara spoke. "I was raised to believe Guardians chose only us. That we, the royal bloodline, were the apex of evolution. But you, and Cobalt, you prove otherwise." Ethan glanced at her, heart hammering. "And does that frighten you?" She smiled sadly. "It terrifies me." And yet, she reached out, her fingers brushing his. A fragile, tentative bond forming beyond politics, beyond fear. A bond of truth. The next days blurred into a rhythm of survival. Travel by night. Hide by day. The wilds tested them at every turn. Vines that struck like serpents. Pools of quicksilver that swallowed the unwary. Predators with teeth like crystal daggers. But with each trial, the bond between Ethan, Farrara, and Cobalt deepened. They fought as one. Moved as one. And with every heartbeat, Cobalt grew. No longer a cub, he was now nearly the size of a small earth horse, his muscles rippling under electric blue fur, his ice blue eyes gleaming with ancient intelligence. He had become a true guardian. On the 6th night, they reached the edge of the sanctuary basin. From the ridge, Ethan saw it. A great circle of towering stones, each carved with ancient sigils, surrounding a smooth platform that pulsed faintly with inner light. The wilderness sanctuary. The only place where the true bonding ceremony could occur. The only hope of stabilizing Cobalt's incredible power before it consumed them all. But the sanctuary was not empty. Vex forces had arrived. Tents dotted the basin floor. Fires burned, casting long shadows against the stone. And within the sanctuary, figures moved: soldiers, corrupted guardians, weapons bristling with forbidden tech. They intend to defile the right, Krell said grimly. To seize the power for themselves. Ethan felt rage coil in his gut. Cobalt growled low, his hackles raised. Farrara laid a hand on Ethan's arm, her voice steady. "We can still reach the center. The Guardians recognize you. They may not attack if they sense your bond." Ethan met her gaze, seeing not a princess but a warrior willing to defy an empire for what was right. He nodded. "Then let's finish what we started." Under the cover of darkness, they moved. Through twisted paths. Past sentries half asleep or too arrogant to expect resistance. Every step felt heavy, electric with possibility. At the edge of the sanctuary platform, Krell handed Ethan a small vial, the essence of the first guardian, a sacred catalyst for the bonding. "Once the rite begins," Krell warned, "there is no turning back. You will be changed. Both of you." Ethan tightened his grip on the vial. He looked at Cobalt, massive now, majestic, watching him with eyes that knew too much. He looked at Farrara, armor battered, hair wild, but eyes burning with trust. He breathed in the alien night. And stepped onto the ancient stones. The sanctuary platform throbbed under Ethan's boots, a living pulse rising from the ancient stones. Cobalt stepped beside him, massive and radiant, his blue fur crackling faintly with energy. Farrara approached from the shadows, her ceremonial armor shed, replaced with simple robes woven from threads that shimmered like starlight. Her emerald eyes met Ethan's across the sacred circle. No words were needed. Only trust. Only choice. Krell's voice rose over the gathered silence. By the ancient rites, the bond shall be made. Not by blood. Not by decree. But by true resonance. Around the sanctuary, guardians stirred, those once corrupted by Vex's influence now watching, curious, uncertain. Ethan knelt before Cobalt, offering the vial of essence. The guardian leaned forward, touching the vial with his nose. The liquid burst into brilliant light, swirling around them, binding their energies in strands of pure, living power. Farrera stepped forward, placing her hand over Ethan's heart. He placed his over hers. Their energies intertwined, visible now to all, a weaving of gold and blue and green, wrapping them in an iridescent cocoon. The platform blazed with ancient symbols, long dormant, now alive once more. From the edges of the basin, the first assault came. Vex soldiers charged, weapons drawn, corrupted guardians at their flanks. The sanctuary stones flared, pushing many back, but some pressed through, desperate to disrupt the ceremony. Cobalt roared, the sound shaking the mountains themselves. He leapt forward, intercepting attackers with terrifying grace, never killing, only disabling, as if knowing the bond ceremony forbade bloodshed within its heart. Farrera, too, fought, moving like a dancer through the chaos, plasma blades spinning in arcs of silver light. And Ethan? Ethan stood firm in the center, his mind locked with Cobalt, his spirit fused with Farrera's, channeling the energies around him. Vex appeared at the far side of the sanctuary, a weapon of forbidden design clutched in his hands. And this, he screamed. This corruption must be purged. He aimed the device, a resonance disruptor, at Ethan. But Cobalt moved faster. With a thunderous leap, he landed between Ethan and the blast, absorbing the full force with a snarl of pain. Ethan staggered but did not fall. Their bond, their shared essence, surged higher. Not even the disruptor could sever what had been forged. Krell raised his staff. Complete the bond. Now, Ethan and Farrera faced each other once more. No longer strangers. No longer alien to each other. Bound by choice. By hope. By love. They pressed their foreheads together, the glow of their merged energies blinding. Images raced through Ethan's mind: Earth's oceans, Vidia's twin suns, Cobalt's ancient lineage, Farrera's childhood dreams. Their bond solidified, a resonance so pure that the sanctuary itself shuddered with joy. The guardians roared, a symphony of awakening that echoed across the planet. The light burst outward. The corrupted guardians collapsed and rose, free once more. Vex soldiers dropped their weapons, dazed, as if awakening from a long nightmare. Lord Vex himself staggered, eyes wide with terror, before Krell's staff struck him down. Justice, swift, and ancient. As the light faded, Ethan opened his eyes. Farrera stood before him, her skin illuminated by soft patterns of bonded light now woven into her being. Cobalt stood taller, stronger, his presence regal. The sanctuary stones, once cracked and broken, now gleamed anew. The ancient bond, forgotten, corrupted, suppressed for centuries, had been reborn. And it had chosen a human. Later, as they stood on the sanctuary's highest platform, overlooking the rejuvenated basin, Farrera turned to Ethan. "You have changed our world," she said softly. Ethan shook his head. "We changed it together." Cobalt rumbled in agreement, lowering his massive head to nuzzle them both. Across the sanctuary, guardians and Vidians mingled freely for the first time in living memory. Not as master and weapon, but as equals. As family. But even as they celebrated, Ethan felt a whisper at the edge of his bond with Cobalt. A shadow stirring across the stars. The Void Hunters. The real enemy. The reason the Guardians had been created in the first place. They were waking. And they were coming. Ethan tightened his grip on Ferrera's hand. He didn't know what the future would bring. War. Sacrifice. Hope. But he knew this. Together, they could face anything. Together, they were stronger than destiny itself. 6 months later, the twin sons of Vidia bathed the great capital in golden light. The city had changed. Gone were the rigid caste divisions. Gone were the silent, forced guardians tethered by bloodlines. Now, guardians roamed freely among Vidians, choosing their companions by resonance, not heritage. Bonds of trust, not tradition. The once solemn temple of guardians had been reborn into a place of learning and celebration. Ethan Hope stood at the grand balcony overlooking the gathering crowds. By his side stood Ferrera, no longer just a princess, but a leader of a new era. And towering behind them, majestic and powerful, stood Cobalt. His blue fur shimmered with silver accents, now marks of a prime guardian, a leader among his kind. Ethan smiled faintly as he watched a young Vidian boy cautiously approach a smaller guardian. The creature rumbled low, then lowered its massive head to touch forwards with a child. A new bond was born. A new future, unfolding before their eyes. The diplomatic delegation from Earth arrived weeks ago. Scientists, ambassadors, scholars, all eager to witness what was once thought impossible. True partnership between species across the stars. Agreements were signed. Technology exchanged. Guardian eggs entrusted to human hands, ready to bond with those whose spirits resonated strong enough. Earth would need its own guardians. Because darker days loomed. The first signs came in whispers. Disruptions in deep space monitoring. Unnatural voids where stars should have shined. Echoes of something vast, cold, and ancient moving at the edges of known space. And then, the message came. The planetary defense systems of Vidia lit up, broadcasting a single, chilling alert. Void signature detected. Approaching outer system. The commanders gathered. Guardians assembled, their deep rumbles vibrating through the crystal halls. On the massive viewing screen, it appeared. A mass of living darkness, writhing against the light, absorbing all that touched it. A void hunter. Ethan stood before the assembled defenders, both Vidian and human. Cobalt at his side, Ferrera's hand in his. He looked into the faces of those who once viewed him as an outsider, a threat. Now, they looked to him as something else. A bridge. A bond. A hope. We stand at the beginning of something new, Ethan said, his voice steady across the courtyard. Not because we share blood, or history. But because we choose to stand together. Guardians and bondmates. Vidians and humans. One spirit. One defense. Cobalt roared, a sound of primal power that rolled across the city like thunder. The Guardians answered, one by one, their voices rising in a chorus of unity. In the command chamber, Ferrera pressed her hand to Ethan's. Whatever comes, she said softly, we will face it. Together. Ethan turned to her, seeing not a princess, not an alien, but the other half of his soul. Always, he promised. They kissed under the light of the twin suns, sealing a vow older than any ancient rite. Not of blood. Not of power. But of choice. Of love. Of unbreakable bond. High above Vidia, in the black between stars, the void hunters gathered. Their hunger, silent and endless. Their purpose, singular. But this time, they would find a world ready. A world bonded. A world willing to fight not with fear but with hope. And standing at the heart of that world, hand in hand, were two souls once divided by stars, now united by destiny.